When my father was 45 years old, he died. And as an 8-year-old girl, I learned that people die, also when they're not old. And what I experienced is that people are very uncomfortable talking about death, or aging, or injuries, or disability for that matter. Like my father, I'm a designer. That's how I look at the world, that's who I am. Now, the word design comes from purpose, plan, and intention. A design is in fact a process toward a solution with a particular purpose within a context of constraints. And I'm starting with a definition here because the word design is freely used in Western world to mention all those things that need to sound a lot more sexier than they really are in order to sell. I'm always looking at a context that needs design. And sometimes I find a context, and sometimes it is something that somebody says that launches a context into my viewfinder. And that happened some 4 years ago when I was with my mom walking over the marketplace, and we were passing by some elderly people, and they had some rollators, scooters. Now, you got to know about my mom that she's quite a character, and she's got a way of being quite forthright, but out of the blue, she said, "Over my dead body, I'll ever use one of those." So I asked her what she meant. And she took a pause and she said, "Well, actually, I'm just very scared to become disabled and to be looked upon as I look upon them." Now, with that one comment of my mom, I realized that walking aids can actually emphasize the disability. There was a context, and right there, right then, I decided to design something for my mom that even she would use. So I started researching. How many people are actually using mobility aids, or how many people should be using mobility aids? And besides the stigma, is there other functional things that I need to consider? For example, not to be hunched over, have your hands free, have no strain on your legs, be at eye level. The demographics. What is the extent of the people that I would actually design for? And then I found out that the CDC states that insufficient activity is the #1 cause for half of the people that have diabetes. 29 million people in North America of all ages have diabetes, and they're all at the risk of losing their limbs and losing mobility. Some 1 million people have Parkinson's. Some 400,000 to 500,000 people have MS, just to name a few. And besides all that, there is a tsunami of baby boomers that is ramming into a healthcare system that is no longer compatible. And we say healthcare system, but really, it is more like a sick care system, because it only kicks in once we are sick. Preventative healthcare, merely scanning for whether you have cancer, billable procedures, that's not health. That's business. So I started to wonder, how can we create a paradigm for our healthcare that is really supporting our wellness? How can we shift our mindset in how we think about our own health? And as I started researching this, I got completely excited because it is multi-layered, it's multifaceted, it's huge. And as I set out to design something less stigmatizing for my mom, I started realizing that what I needed to design was something that supports an active life, regardless of physical challenges. When I was 5 years old, my grandmother said to me, "If you ever face a problem, just turn it around and you might find a solution." And what she meant was, don't judge. Do not assume anything until you realize that your perspective is only limited. So the context and the extent are meaningless if I do not understand who I'm designing for, the users. Because the users hold the secret for the design that needs to resolve their problems. So who are those users? And I met a lot of people. I met people with MS who were searching online for years for something that would make them feel less disabled. I was meeting a lot of people like my mom who would rather use nothing and be at the risk of falling and being injured. And I met many people with illnesses I'd never even heard about, CMT, neuropathy, yet all diseases that obstruct an active life. I met hundreds of people, truly amazing people, powerful people, beautiful people, courageous people, that all shared with me that they often feel dismissed, judged by the sum of their physical appearance. But there's one person in particular I want you to tell about, and that's Dini. A few years ago, when Dini was riding her bicycle, she collided with a dump truck. The driver didn't even see her. Numerous surgeries, excruciating pains, trauma, nightmares, and 8 months of rehabilitation. Dini was slowly coming to terms with how her body had changed. Dini had lost both her legs. And Dini shared a lot of stories with me over the years, but one in particular really stuck with me. In the beginning of the rehabilitation, she had a really, really rough day, and she said to her husband, Bert, let's go to town. I want to buy a new dress, something that would make me feel better. So they went to town. They looked a nice boutique up, and Dini rolled in, and they were looking around for nice dresses, and this lovely sales lady came to them and said, can I help you? And Dini said, well, yeah, I'm looking for a nice dress. And the woman turns to Bet and says, does she like red? And what was supposed to be uplifting was absolutely devastating, because in that moment, Dini realized that not just her body had changed, her whole life had changed, and not in the least by how people see her and respond to her, driven by their own fears and unintentionally, I'm sure, but dismissing her. And in that, Dini is always exposed and vulnerable. And I too, when I first met Dini, I felt uncomfortable. Can I ask questions? Do you bend down? But with my willingness to meet the users, with my willingness to be uncomfortable with myself, I met this radiant woman. And if I then try to imagine myself in her body, I realized I'm still the same whole human being, like she is. And when I then try to imagine how she would want to live her life, she would want to live a full life, be social, be active, go to the movies, go to museums, her favorite activity, live, love. Not much different than you and I, right? So now I was getting ready to design. And instead of making a functional solution for a body with a problem, I now knew that the device needed to be cool. So cool that people would love to use it. And it needed to be so cool that the user would feel proud and happy. And ultimately, it needed to be so cool that it would overcome the discomfort of other people with the disability. So you've been listening to me now for some time while I'm sitting on what I designed. I've got my hands free to hug you. I'm at eye level. I've got no pain in my legs. I'm comfortable. Yet you have no way of telling whether I have MS, or maybe Parkinson's, or maybe I miss a leg, or none of those, because I'm using this to stay active as I am aging, as I might get injured, as I might become disabled. Because we are all mortal. That is the one thing that we have in common, that equalizes us. And in that, we have an incredible opportunity to connect. Thank you.